Do you ever want to go to space?
I really shouldn't be doing this.
Balloons are fun, but are they really the culprit behind important UFO cases, as NASA has again claimed in their recent analysis of the GoFast footage? Or is NASA lying?
It began in Roswell, New Mexico. Near White Sands and Alamogordo, Roswell was home base for many early tests of atom bombs and guided missiles. Here also, the practice of military stonewalling may have been perpetrated. The case began when Roswell businessman Dan Wilmot witnessed an amazing object over the town. His son tells the story.
This was their home in July of 1947. It was one summer evening. They were sitting out here. Dad looked up in the west and saw an object that came down and had lights blinking, and it was rather frightening to him, but he said all of a sudden it seemed to rock a little bit and sort of counterbalanced itself, wiggle a little bit, then seemed to settle down and take off at a rapid rate of speed.
The next day, reporters heard that the Air Force had found fragments of the mystery object crashed on a remote ranch northwest of Roswell. Excitement ran high until officials announced it was only a weather balloon. Major Jesse Marcel, in charge of the operation, now tells a far different story. Marcel retraced his secret recovery operation across the hot New Mexico desert.
We left Roswell perhaps around 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. As you can see, it's flat. It is very difficult. In fact, with just verbal directions, we never would have found it. We had to follow the rancher out there.
The crash site was so remote, it took an entire day to drive there.
The following morning, we went out to the site where the crash was. And what I saw, I couldn't believe there was so much of it. It was scattered over such a vast area. So we proceeded to pick up as much of the debris as we could, loaded in a wagon. We filled that up. It took us a good part of the day to do that, because there's such small fragments that we had to do a lot of picking. We found a piece of metal about a 1.5 to 2 feet wide and about 2 or 3 feet long. Felt like you had nothing in your hands. It wasn't any thicker than the foil out of a pack of cigarettes. But the thing about that got me is that you couldn't even bend it. You couldn't bend it. Even with a sledgehammer would bounce off of it. So I knew that I had never seen anything like that before. And as of now, I don't know what it was. They took pictures, of course. They had a whole flock of microphones there. They wanted me they wanted some comments from me, but I wasn't at liberty to do that. So all I could do is keep my mouth shut. And General Ramey is the one who discussed, told the newspapers, the newsmen, what it was and to forget about it. It was nothing more than a weather observation balloon, of course, which we both knew differently. It was not anything from this earth that I'm quite sure of, because being an intelligence officer, I was familiar with just about all materials used in aircraft and in our air travel. This was nothing like that. It could not be. It could not have been.
I had the opportunity to do extra work during downtime, which was between missions, and I walked into a photo lab, which was the NASA lab across the hallway. I had a secret clearance, which is not that high, but I was able to go into restricted areas, which this was. At the time, I was talking to one of the techs in there, and he drew my attention to a photograph, a NASA photograph. It had a dot on it. And I said, what is that? Well, he drew my attention to it, and I said, is that a dot on the emulsion? And he said, and he's smiling, and he has his hands crossed, and he said, round dots on the emulsion don't leave round shadows on the ground. And this was an aerial photograph of the Earth, I'm assuming the Earth, because it had pine trees on it, and the shadows of the craft, or whatever it was were in the same angle as the trees. And by its very nature, UFO, and I wanted to clarify that to a gentleman that was talking to me, means unidentified. So I did not know what this was. But I realized at this point that it's very secret, that it was kept secret, because I asked him, what are you going to do with this piece of information? And he said, we always airbrush these out before we sell them to the public.
For people who don't know, Donna Hare worked as I think for Philco Ford, which was a NASA subcontractor in the early 70s. And she has had a lot to say about what she learned through her NASA colleagues about secret space program. And she's made some very, very forthright statements about NASA's engagement with UFOs and astronauts encountering UFOs on their missions and so forth. So you're referring to her.
Yep, and she had secret clearance in the area where she worked, bearing in mind that some of these setups, there are lots of open areas near each other, but they'll all have different clearances. You don't necessarily have locked doors, apparently. And she's at work one day and she wanders into another area with a colleague, to another colleague who's got an electronic airbrushing kit, basically. For the high resolution satellite imaging. And he says, Donna, look at this. Tell me what you think. And he shows her like a white disc above the terrain. And the shadow of this white disc on the terrain. And she didn't notice the shadow at first. And she says, well, being a photographic, she was a launch mission specialist, right? Launch photographic slides and stuff. And she didn't notice the shadow at first. She said, oh, it could be a blob of the emulsion or something. He said, yeah, but look at the shadow. And it was quite clearly, she said, you see after that it's a disc-shaped craft. The shadow was shaped over the rocks and the trees and the terrain. And in the retelling of this story, she mentioned which space center it was at, which was Johnson, and which building it was in, which was Building 8.
Oh.
And yeah, I was already on Johnson with the blank password scanning method.
Yes.
Oh, crikey, Building 8, I've got to get onto this. And when you're on there, it's mostly done through a command console at first when you're setting up your links. And I did, oh crikey, I forget the command now. You can run a command in a Windows box that shows you a list of all the machines on the network, plus their comment fields. And system administrators, network administrators use these comment fields for serial numbers, for auditing, all sorts of handy information. And luckily, the NASA administrators were really on their job, and you knew which building each machine was in, the serial number, etc. So I stripped out all the Building 8 machines, and then did a blank password scan on those. And I think only 10 or so had blank passwords.
So based on a very good lead from Donna Hare from something from years and years ago, it sounds like you were able to pinpoint the destination of what you were looking for, and to try to confirm any kind of information that she had talked about back in the 70s. That's what it sounds like. So what happened?
So I think, yeah, there were 8 to 10 blank password machines. And so you run your scan, they come back, you log on to each one, you look individually. And all of these were very, because I was used to, whatever personnel you're on, they've got desktops with folders and reminders and all sorts of shortcuts. These machines had nothing on it but a couple of folders and a couple of shortcuts. And but these files were massive. They had folders called either sort of raw and filtered, or processed and unprocessed. And that was my first sign. What Donna said is absolutely true. This is almost exactly how she described it.
This is fascinating. You encounter these raw files of 200 megabytes or so, and what do they have on them? What do they show?
Right, exactly. So I couldn't download it, so I had to look at it on the desktop. And once you make your link through your command console, then I ran a remote control desktop thing called Remotely Anywhere. It's a bit like using PC Anywhere, or a lot of people use them these days, aren't they, for logging into the office remotely.
Okay.
Your desktop. So yeah, it was a bit like that. And I couldn't download them, so I just double-clicked on one, just to see it there and then on the desktop. So I had to know instantly what was there. Could I confirm right there and then what Donna Hare was saying? And I did, and then it started to come on the screen, and it was very slow, sort of shuttering down line by line. I thought, crikey, I can't bloody wait for this. I turned the screen down, and it's still quite slow. I thought it was a bit faster.
Maddening.
And I ended up at, I think, 640 by 480 resolution.
Okay.
And then it was coming down. Okay, let's see. And there was what looked like fuzzy sort of grey at first. And then there was this lightning haze. And then there was the hemisphere of a planet. And then I'm like, this is it. I found it. It's the Holy Grail. Exactly what I was looking for. All confirmed with one story. Because that's what I wanted. I didn't want to read about it or watch videos of lights in the sky. I wanted, from the horse's mouth, so to speak, proof that A, they were real, and B, that NASA or the government knew about them. So here it was. And it got about 2/3 of the way down. And there was, I assume it was the Earth. I can't believe if it was a color or monochrome, but clouds, and then this perfectly smooth shell of a craft that got to just underneath its body, and there were no rivets, no seams. There was no sign of sort of working on this thing. It was weirdly smooth, but it did have these, like the golf ball domes, the geodesic domes for like radar installations, which is kind of human above and below. And
so these were on the craft, these domes type structures?
Yeah.
That's very interesting. And then someone just said, click, we'll disconnect you.
Yeah.
So what else did you learn before the hammer came down on you in 2002? You saw this image, you saw an Excel spreadsheet that had a list of or had a reference to non-terrestrial officers, but you saw a few other things as well, didn't you?
Not UFO related.
Not UFO related?
No. And nothing about free energy whatsoever.
Didn't you see a list of so-called fleet-to-fleet transfers involving ships that were actually not US Navy vessels? That's what I thought. Yeah,
that's the same spreadsheet as the non-terrestrial officer spreadsheet.
Okay. So those are the two fundamental things. And then you are arrested. They confiscate your computer in 2002. That's always a fun experience.
Yeah.
And you spent the next 10 years wondering if you were going to be sent to Guantanamo Bay.
It's scary. It's just mad.
I just want to point out to people like that you were arrested because you were explicitly looking in for UFO related information. And I absolutely have never doubted you when you say that you found it. And to me, the proof of that is that the US government went after you at all. So what we have in your case is proof that you were able to access restricted areas of various US military sites.
Echo 6-1 Tango, Roger, over. Oh, got it! Woohoo! Roger, there's troubleshooting. Did you box moving target? 02. No, I took an auto track. Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, dude. Wow, look at that, man.
Government officials can't answer this naval pilot's question. With current data, they can deduce just a few things about this mystery dot. Based off of how high it is off the water and how fast it's likely going, it's probably drifting on the wind. And it's brighter than the ocean it's floating above, so it's likely colder than the water and not using a propulsion system.
The NASA independent study team did not find any evidence that UAP have an extraterrestrial origin. But we don't know what these UAP are.
This is a live NASA feed. And then this was taking pictures of the ionosphere. Then it zooms on the North Pole. I don't know if it's auto tracking something, and then these come into sight. the heck was that?
Another one's coming down.
Oh my Lord.
That's a frickin' fleet.
Holy cow.
Look at all of them. That's not Starlink.
That's definitely not
Look,
Starlink.
another one coming down from the top.
Oh my God, dude, this is that.
Dude, this is a fleet.
What?
Look at all those.
Holy cow.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA.
We are not hiding anything. We have nothing to hide.
We can say that the recent sightings are in no way connected with any secret development by any agency of the United States.
The Air Force knows.
Oh, you see that?
Roger, Delta VZ is plus 00190.
Lots cleared. 7, go ahead.
I'll tell you at 10 o'clock high. An object which is at the same place all the time and appears to be tumbling. Always had it ever since yesterday. It just seems to be tagging along with us.
Franklin, we see a long line.
This is Houston. Say again, 7?
I'll tell you at 10 o'clock high.
To this time, there is no valid scientific proof that we have been visited by spaceships.
Do I believe there's life in a universe that is so vast that it's hard for me to comprehend how big it is? My personal answer is yes.
You said you saw literally hundreds of unidentifiable flying objects.
Yes, they were flying quite high. How high we couldn't tell because we couldn't get anywhere near their altitude. But they were either very large craft way up or smaller craft still well above what we could get to.
For a day and a half, all of this happened. But then no one wanted to talk about it.
Well, we sent a report forward on it, and the answer that finally came back months later was they were probably high-flying seed pods, which didn't sound very logical.
Supervising flight testing in Edwards Air Force Base, his military camera crew actually filmed an unidentified saucer-shaped object landing near the site.
As they were sitting there filming, a little saucer came from, I say little saucer, it was a saucer, came flying over their heads, put down 3 little landing gear and landed right out on the dry lake bed. And they picked up their cameras and started over toward it, filming as they went. And when they got in fairly close to it, it lifted up, put the gear back in the wheel wells, tipped up, and took off at a great rate of speed. And so they came into my office and told me what had happened, and I sent them over to develop the film. And then had to go through all the proper regulations of reporting this, and we wound up having to send the film forward to Washington in the base jet airplane, and I don't know whether anyone's ever seen it since. It was on Jim McDivitt's Gemini 7 mission, where they saw this glint of something metallic off in the distance, and he reported, and nobody had it listed on the ground, so he tried getting a picture of it, but the sun, unfortunately, was glinting off of it so bright. All you got is just a glint. There was no detail on what it was, but never any further sighting at all on it.
One of our pioneer astronauts was Brigadier General James McDivitt. In 1965, General McDivitt spent 4 days in outer space as command pilot of Gemini 4. General McDivitt, have you ever seen a UFO?
Yes,
During my flight on Gemini 4 in 1965, I saw an object in space fairly close to our spacecraft that I could not identify. It looked to me like maybe the upper stage of another rocket. I tried to take some pictures of it, but unfortunately the pictures did not come out properly. We never were able to identify what it was, and all of our ground radar tracking data indicated that there shouldn't have been another object anywhere near us.
There is abundant evidence that we are being contacted, that civilizations have been visiting us for a very long time.
In April of 1979, cosmonaut Viktor Afanasyev lifted off from Star City to dock with the Soviet Soyuz 6 space station. But while en route, something strange happened. Cosmonaut Afanasyev saw an unidentified object turn toward his craft and begin tailing it through space.
It followed us during half of our orbit. We observed it on the light side, and when we entered the shadow side, it disappeared completely. It was an engineering structure made from some type of metal, approximately 40 meters long with inner holes. The object was narrow here and wider here, and inside there were openings. Some places had projections like small wings. The object stayed very close to us. We photographed it, and our photos showed it to be 23 to 28 meters away.
In addition to photographing the UFO, Afanasyev continually reported back to Mission Control about the craft's size, its shape, and position. When the cosmonaut returned to Earth, he was debriefed, told never to reveal what he knew, and had his cameras and film confiscated.
The Apollo space missions of the 1960s stirred America into space fever. But as the country's finest astronauts hurtled skywards in conventional rockets, did the president know of the existence of sources and propulsion systems that were literally out of this world? Dr. Edgar Mitchell of the Apollo 14 mission and the sixth man to walk on the moon has carried out extensive investigations of the alleged saucer crashes, as well as the question of alien contact.
I am very distressed that the black project teams are operating without oversight from official committees, from Congress, if you will, from public oversight, with black budgets that no one knows where it's going or what it's being used for. I find that exceedingly distressing, frightening, the ultimate big brother scenario.
Everybody who saw the airplane could not believe what they were seeing. It was a Buck Rogers airplane. This airplane was built, designed almost 40 years ago. 40 years before that, the hottest thing flying was a Seversky P-35. 40 years before that, it was a balloon. So the technology has not stood still.
The government's primary concerns, according to the documents we've gotten, and I'll show a couple of these in just a second, were how do the darn things work? Imagine if you could duplicate the technology.
Sure.
They knew right off in 1947, a crash occurred outside Roswell, New Mexico, within 2 weeks of the big noise beginning about flying saucers. Let me give you an example. We went after the CIA. Everybody's favorite target, of course. They released 900 pages of stuff with internal references indicating there were hundreds more documents that they hadn't released. They put out a list of 57 documents originating with other agencies, 18 from the super secret National Security Agency. Naturally, we went after those. They turned us down flat. We appealed. We go to court. They did a search. They find 160 documents. We want them. You can't have them. We asked that the judge be allowed, federal court judge, be allowed to see the documents to decide whether they were hiding behind national security improperly. They refused to give them to the judge. They provide him with a 21-page top secret affidavit for him to see in chambers. Our lawyer doesn't get to see it. He looks at that and he decides in their favor. We go after the 21-pager. We're unsuccessful at the Federal Court of Appeals.
What do you think's on these 21
Well,
pages?
we got it. Here it is. And the only trouble is, and this illustrates the problem, as you start going through it.
We have some of this to show. All right, yeah, go ahead.
As you start going through it, you pretty soon find
This is looks like my my autobiography here.
Yeah, I mean, you know, this is ridiculous. 80% of this document that we got under freedom of information is expurgated.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody who says there isn't a cover-up.
Hello and welcome to On the Record. Obviously, with different species, they have different motives. I mean, are there good aliens and bad aliens?
Good
from what
aliens
you know?
and bad aliens, and all kinds of ways and reasons for interacting with us.
Why don't you take a couple of minutes? Now, you've done as much research on UFOs as just about anyone, I'd imagine, and if you haven't done it, you know people who have. Where did it all start, and how have we put this picture together of where they came from and why they're here?
Well, the whole thing started in July 2nd, 1947. That was the first crash.
First crash of an alien spaceship.
Of an alien spaceship. July 6th is when they recovered it and sent it to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. July 7th is when they held the press conference and told the people it was a weather balloon, which the press bought hook, line, and sinker. September of that year, President Truman established MJ-12, and the purpose of that was to study the saucers and cover up the existence of UFOs.
And you say we recovered alien bodies from that incident, right?
4 from that particular crash, yes.
And what'd they do with them?
They autopsied them. Dr. Detlef Bronk was the chief surgeon, so to speak. He was the one that named them EBEs. It stands for Extraterrestrial Biological Entities. We captured 3 live EBEs. They were numbered in their order of capture, EBE-1, EBE-2, and EBE-3. There was 2, one in Los Alamos and one either at Edwards or up at the test site.
At Groom Lake, Nevada.
At Groom Lake. Now there's still one EBE still living, EBE-3, and there is a videotape that eventually is going to be released to the public, and it's an interview with him. As hard as that may sound, as hard as that may be to believe, there is a videotape of an interview with EBE-3.
And what is this language that the interviewers are
I haven't seen the tape, so I don't know.
What we're seeing.
All right, we're looking at the interview suite at S4. It's kept dark for the comfort of the aliens. The figure who is just barely visible in the left foreground is the telepath, and behind the camera is a raked seating area for observers. Although in this case, I believe the only other person present was a military aide. The alien is seated behind a glass partition in a biocontainment area, which is maintained at biosafety level 2, the lowest designation. The aliens eliminated microbial and viral life from their own ecosystem long ago. They aren't susceptible to our diseases directly, but it has been shown that microbes can reproduce and form colonies within their respiratory systems, which tends to exacerbate the debilities they seem to suffer anyway in our environment. In fact, you can see here the alien is beginning to flag. The interview was not going well. The telepath was trying to clarify some points from a previous interview, but he wasn't receiving coherent responses. As you can see, the being is in real distress. At this point, the telepath is sending out a message to the medical staff. He's trying to communicate with the alien, but he's getting no response. There's very little he can do. There's no direct connection between his space and the biocontainment area. That's the aide stepping in on the right. The medical staff should be there by now. They're slow in responding. There they are. I have to say the medical personnel at S4 are less than first rate. They tend to be selected for their willingness to keep secrets rather than their medical competence. By the way, he's not shining that light into the eyes. It looks that way, but in fact he's checking for hemorrhaging around the eye sockets and in the nasal cavity. I'm sorry. It's very hard for me to watch this.
You point to one such incident where the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, leaks a leaked memo that came out confirming this. And this, I think it was in 1989 that this memo came out. The leaked DIA document reveals how human-like Nordic extraterrestrials are friendly and can be relied upon. And we've had this relationship. So this comes right from the government. We have these documents from the Defense Intelligence Agency. What specifically do they say and talk about?
This was very likely a briefing document that was given in 1989 to an incoming member of the Majestic 12 control group, that one member was being replaced, another one was coming in. So they gave him a briefing on what's the state of affairs out there, and to kind of like boil it all down in terms of, you know, the different extraterrestrial groups out there. It described 4 categories of extraterrestrials. You know, one are the human-looking extraterrestrials. It described them as pretty much the way my source JP and others have described these Nordic human-looking groups, as friendly to humanity, as potentially good allies. And then it described the second category, the kind of biological greys that are pervasive in terms of the abduction literature, and it described 2 other categories involving kind of like transmorphic entities and so forth.
It's unbelievable. And this is where I want my audience right now to just have an open mind here. This is unbelievable to me. I mean, I've been doing research on the secret space program for years, not to your level, of course, but I just can't. To me, this is the next step, this disclosure about the secret space program. Like, the craft is one thing, the reverse engineering of these craft is one thing, but to know that the United States has actively been involved with extraterrestrials, having off-world meetings on moon bases, for decades, really. I mean, that's really what we're talking about here, right, Doctor?
Well, that's right. Yeah, there's been these relationships with different extraterrestrial factions. And so this is where it becomes important that we distinguish between different factions, that just as humanity is divided into different nations with their own agendas and their own cultures, extraterrestrials also are divided in terms of their kind of species, the appearance, and their political agendas. You know, boiling it all down to the simplest terms, I think in a way, extraterrestrials can be divided into groups that are all into kind of centralized control, and they will manipulate people to achieve that. And other groups of extraterrestrials, which are largely the human-looking groups, but not exclusively, who are more freedom-loving and kind of like democratic.
What is the secret space program? If someone has never heard of this as a concept, doesn't understand how this functions, what its relationship is, where the base is, what type of craft, who's involved with this, and there's been a number of people that have come forward publicly admitting that they've been a part of the secret space program, and then privately to you using alternative names that you've written about and sources. So can you just tell us, what is the secret space program? When did it start, and what are its functions?
Sure. Well, in the 1940s and 1950s, you have a lot of alien technologies being found all over the planet, and so you have various corporations and think tanks involved in the study and reverse engineering of these in the 1940s and 50s. So by the late 50s and early 60s, you have the first prototypes being developed of anti-gravity craft, and you can actually confirm this by looking at in the literature of the aerospace industries in the 1950s. First, there was prominent discussion in official aviation magazines about the future of anti-gravity technology, how the rocket industry was a dinosaur. Everything is going to be anti-gravity in the future. And then by the late 50s, it all went dark. You didn't find any mention in the aerospace journals about anti-gravity technology anymore. And that's when the decision was made that this kind of technology is not going to be released into the public arena. It's going to be developed secretly to develop these space programs with fleets of anti-gravity crafts. And with the creation of Space Force, I think what that signified is that there was an attempt to bring that incredible, the technologies, the personnel, all of the functions and projects that are happening in deep space through these secret space programs, kind of like to bring those into the white world.
Note, a mysterious subject, if you will. Can you explain why the Department of Defense has set up a UFO task force? Here's what I've got from The Guardian. The U.S. Department of Defense has formed a new body to investigate what it calls unidentified aerial phenomena, to monitor reported sightings of what most people call UFOs. Mr. President, as we wrap up here, are there UFOs?
Well, I'm going to have to check on that. I mean, I've heard that. I heard that 2 days ago, so I'll check on that. I'll take a good, strong look at that. But I will tell you this. We now have created a military, the likes of which we've never had before, in terms of equipment.
We both have focused a lot on contemporary, kind of the deep politics of what's going on in this world in terms of a breakaway civilization, in terms of the deep financing of that. You've done a lot of work on that, and I wonder if you would mind exploring a little bit of that with listeners.
Well, I approach this from two different points of view, and that's kind of why I backed into Catherine Fitz and she backed into me, because she was coming at it from a very different point of view. She was encountering massive amounts of fraud in the government within HED and so on and so forth, and wondering where's all this money going. And I came to it from kind of the reverse angle. I was watching all of this and writing books about all of the recovery of Axis loot at the end of World War II, not just the Nazis, but even more significantly the Japanese. And again, there's just massive amounts of loot that has not really ever been adequately accounted for, and it's just simply disappeared. Well, where's it going? Right. So I began to think in terms of your hypothesis, well, there's this vast infrastructure, they've got all this money, and they're researching all this stuff, that this is going to lead to a breakaway civilization, or even a breakaway culture, if you want to call it that. Well, if that's the case, I took the reasoning that she had there a little bit further. Well, we've got to have financing for this, and we've got to keep it hidden. So I began to develop the idea of a hypothesis of a completely hidden system of finance. And then what really got my attention was when all of those bearer bonds scandals started popping up and then just disappeared right off the radar, beginning right after the financial meltdown.
I was thinking a little more than 5 years ago, maybe I guess more than that, I suppose. 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah, you had that strange case of these Japanese gentlemen apprehended by the Italian financial police with $134 billion worth of bearer bonds. And, this created such a firestorm that even President Obama had to address it, and he just kind of brushed it off. Well, those things don't exist. They're not real. They're all counterfeit. And then there was another one in Spain, which involved, I think it was either $2 or $6 trillion worth of bearer bonds. And again, it was all written off. Well, these are all counterfeit. There's nothing to this. This is just a scam that people are running over and over. And I talked about this at the Secret Space Program conference that you and I talked at in 2014. The problem is here, counterfeiters don't counterfeit things that don't exist. And this is the problem. If you're going to run the same scam over and over again, and these things don't exist, then what's really going on? And I came to the conclusion, Richard, that this may be the mechanism by which they are moving money around the world, vast amounts of it.
Through trillions of dollars worth of bearer bonds.
Yeah, through trillions of dollars worth of bearer bonds, that they can then, these things are printed with flaws, deliberately printed with flaws, that they can then deny if it ever becomes public. Well, it's a flaw. This is not authentic.
Right. So I mean, we to understand there aren't supposed to be that many that many trillions of dollars in existence in bearer bonds. I think I'm right to assume that. Like
Yeah,
there are bearer bonds, but to have this amount,
Right.
this valuation, this is off the charts. There's not supposed
It's
to be that amount.
totally off the charts.
Yeah, exactly.
And the other problem here that I think is indicative of a hidden system of finance is during the bailouts, we heard that the amount of derivatives, credit default swaps, and so on and so forth, that were on the books in the world was in excess of, I think, something like 16 to 17 quadrillion dollars.
Yeah.
And then, lo and behold, a couple of years later, we start talking about the actual monetary worth of some of these asteroids that they want to go out and mine. And lo and behold, they're in the quadrillions of dollars. So, this is a perfect way to balance the books. Now, I go back to that first bearer bond thing that occurred in Italy. And those bearer bonds were so unusual to me that messages were definitely being sent, because these were pictures of John F. Kennedy on the obverse of the bond, all right? On the reverse of the bond, you had a picture of the Lunar Excursion Module, the Moon, and the Space Shuttle, and this fake bond was supposedly being put out by an East Asian sovereign securities brokerage. Okay. So I thought, okay, this is a clear sign.
Yeah, very interesting. Go on.
This is a clear sign that what I think may have happened to set up this hidden financial system was that they collateralized space and whatever was out there. So in other words, think of the bankers on the Rialto in Venice.
Mm-hmm.
I need a loan to, sail to the Levant and get some spices and some slaves and whatever else they want to get. Give me a loan. And the banker says, sure, we'll take a percentage of the profits of whatever you get back.
Exactly. I just want to understand this point of yours, because it seems very important to me, that the existence of trillions of dollars, potentially, of bearer bonds that are out there, are part of this secret financial system, secret breakaway civilization that is, you think this is an off-the-books, completely separate financial reality from what is accounted for in our world today. And that this is connected to what Catherine Austin Fitts has often basically described as the open window through which so much of our global wealth is going. It's going into this off-world secret space type of a program. And I think that makes a lot of sense. That actually does make a lot of sense.
I put it to Catherine this way when we first talked about this. If you view financial flows as an electric circuit, then there's a lot of money going into the circuit that under normal conditions should pop out at the load end as inflation.
Exactly.
In fact, as hyperinflation.
Exactly.
But yet it hasn't done that.
No.
So there's another load on the circuit. So it's going somewhere else. And, we both came to the conclusions, well, what do you need all this money for if not to create the infrastructure and the technology to go out there and get those resources?
Yeah.
The work of Joseph Farrell, the work of Catherine Austin Fitts, which was plagiarized, a lot by people pretending I'm a galactic ambassador, whatever it was. I'm the reincarnation of Edgar Cayce. No, you're not. So we had a lot of that, yes, but fundamentally brought forward was the idea of a secret space program and the money that was disappearing from the federal budget fueling that. Now we're getting into that. Now it's a headline. So the situation is a little bit different. Now let's remember that Gary McKinnon, who is just referred to as the NASA hacker, out of the UK, he talked about an off-world officers list with a secret space program as early as 2003. And the U.S. tried to extradite him. Actually, Obama was over there trying to extradite him back in 2012 or so. And because he had an Asperger's-like symptoms, they weren't able to do it, thank God. They're going to be able to get Assange, unfortunately. That narrative just got broken about the secret space program. It's over. There is a secret space program. The woman who's the Secretary of the Air Force, she's now said, we need to actually let these programs out because we're going to lose our competitive edge. We need to basically have some transparency in order for people to know that we need to do these things. I want to read a couple of things that she actually said because it's quite remarkable. And again, I want to go back to the idea. I mean, the headlines this week, it's so fascinating that, people get caught up in the circus of impeachment or whatever. The real headlines, the hardcore stuff, was amazing in the past week. The secret space program, the announcement of the Space Force going through both houses of Congress, and also the Pentagon saying that, Elizondo was a liar. Those are great headlines, and they validate everything that we've been working on in this program. So we can see that we're cutting through, we're cutting in to this information wall, this barrier, and that they need to come out and say certain things in order to disclose some of the things that they have going on. But remember, they're always going to try to spin it. All right, let's try this. The U.S. Air Force's top civilian, and again, this is from Defense One, widely shared across a number of media outlets. The U.S. Air Force's top civilian, a key member of Congress, agreed Saturday on the need to declassify a large amount of information about America's military space programs. Okay, military is important there, not for peaceful purposes at all. Quote, declassifying some of what is currently held in secure vaults would be a good idea, Air Force Secretary Barbara Barrett said. You would have to be careful about what we declassified, but there's much more that's classified than what needs to be. Fellow panelist Mike Rogers, the Republican from Alabama, said he met with the secretary earlier in the week. And as it turned out, they discussed that very issue, calling the information on space programs overwhelmingly classified. That's a secret space program.
That was the phrase that caught my eye.
Overwhelmingly
classified.
It is, absolutely.
On the back of the bearer bond, on the front of it, you see Kennedy's picture. On the back of this thing, you see three things. You see the moon, you see the space shuttle, and you see the lunar excursion module from Project Apollo. $1 billion bearer bond, supposedly. And even though the bonds are fake, there's a message there, because the people putting out the fake bonds is a big securities trading firm in the Asia Pacific region, money world. So
somebody's expecting them to get paid off.
So yeah.
They're discovered, as you noted, they're discovered in the hollow of the luggage.
And the hollow of an attaché case. Yes.
Incredible.
By the Italian financial police. Now, this means that Italian intelligence is very good, or someone has tipped them off. And why are these bonds being carried by two Japanese men
and for that kind of money?
For that kind of money, and they're supposedly fake, and then the men are released and disappear.
Incredible.
The story makes no sense. On the face of it, it makes no sense.
Do you think it represents an exchange inside of that secret system?
Yes, I do. And here's why. We have been, and I want to return to my major point here about the bond itself and those three things on the back of it. But we're going to take a little detour here, or go around Harvey's barn, like my mom used to say. The bond itself, we have been assured in all of these bearer bond scandals, are fake.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, here's the question that I have that no one has been adequately able to answer. If you're a counterfeiter, if you're a typical counterfeiter, and you go to the length and expense of counterfeiting money, do you counterfeit $7 bills? In other words, do you counterfeit things that don't exist?
Right.
Answer, no.
Absolutely not.
Second question,
Why would you counterfeit things in such astronomical amounts of value, even if they do really exist? Why would you bother to counterfeit such things? Because the people that you would be able to redeem them for you are probably not going to do it. Why go to all of this length, expense to counterfeit either things that don't exist or that exist in such astronomical amounts of value that you are only going to get a fractional return for the effort and endanger your own life in the process?
It
Why?
doesn't make sense.
None of it makes sense.
That's so much
None of
money.
it.
They must know that the genuine article exists.
Exists. Right. So here's the next problem. Let's go back to that Kennedy bearer bond from the original bearer bond scandal. The moon, the space shuttle, the lunar excursion module. When I saw that, I thought, that's what they're doing.
Mhm.
That's why these things are real. What they're doing, Daniel, is they are playing the same game as the bankers on the Venetian Rialto during the Renaissance. They're floating loans. They're collateralizing them with bonds to merchants to go trade spices or slaves or whatever with China and so on.
Right.
And the bankers, by doing so, get a cut of the action in return. So they're collateralizing their loans with whatever is being traded in what they're financing. So they've extended this operation to outer space. They are collateralizing what they think is going to be out there and thereby creating enormous amounts of liquidity in the system. So let's look at another thing that indicates that space is absolutely at the heart of this.
So they're space bonds, is what you're
They
saying.
are space bonds.
So totally incidental as far as our encounter. When we went onto the slope, because we had our LZ, it was a hasty LZ, and they're dropping supplies. They have, a bunch of stuff, and it's other helos too. They're just kind of forming a perimeter on the city, dropping Marines here. You could provide overwatch. Now, the only thing that's unsettling with this is the fact that they never gave us any comms. You know as well as I do how risky that is.
You didn't have any comms?
We didn't have any comms.
Interesting.
So the Marine that was with me, it was a higher rank than me, was very pissed off about it, because he was a Fallujah Marine, so he went through a lot of shit.
Yeah.
And one of those things, I remember him kept telling me, he's like, if everything ends up going to shit, and you look at me and if I'm fine, it means that you're going to be fine. And I remember him telling us all that in the stick, and he's a good Marine. He's a very outstanding guy. Learned a lot from him during my time in. And I thought about that concept, but then he started picking things apart too. We were positioned near this slope. It wasn't like a steep grade or anything, but it was enough to obscure what was going on the other side that we had no idea what was going on. So we got, naturally you want to take the high ground so you have observation of everything. And this is when we came across this operation. Even though there, for years there's been a stigma to it. For years there's been a giggle effect because of little green men and flying saucers and all that. I myself never thought to this day that I'd ever see anything like this. So going back to the event, we decided to get in a tactical column and approach this, right? And we got down the slope, and it's just like a clearing and just has this big opening. It's almost a little bit more than the football field because this craft took up a majority of that.
So you crest this hill.
Yep.
You look down into the valley.
Yep.
And there's a clearing.
There's a clearing
with a UAP.
Yes.
Just sitting there.
Sitting there,
hovering.
rotating clockwise, yep. And that's in transition this color spectrum I was telling you too. We trekked up close, and we were attack column, so obviously you have points here, right, at each Marine. So you have visuals of the sides, somebody has point, and somebody has the rear. And all of a sudden we're enveloped by this military force of, I still to this day don't know who they are. And
How close did you get?
To the craft?
To the craft.
Roughly 200 meters, 150, 200.
Did you get to the bottom of the hill?
Yes.
So you could see, so you saw the top of it, and then you could see underneath of it.
And underneath of it had this platform that was on the ground that was separate from this craft hovering. So when we were in a tactical column going towards the center of this thing, they actually came from the flanks, but it was more of a diagonal, like a corner of the room, so to speak, right? For them at a tactical advantage, they have interlocking fields of fire on every single person, and they had a team of 8, right? And the gear that they had was black OTV vests. They had black camouflage utilities.
So what you're saying is there would have been no they were professionals.
Yes,
there would have been
yes.
no Mexican standoff where
No.
if they fired, they're shooting into their other squad. They had perfect angles.
Yes, they did.
To where both sides could engage you.
Yes. Team of four, team of four. So it was like a fire team element.
Without worrying about a blue on blue situation.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, with that being said, because as they approached us, you hear the safeties flip off. We kind of knew, and they started yelling at us. They were like, you're not supposed to fucking be here. What the fuck are you guys doing here? Who the fuck are you with? So they knew they were using the kind of lingo that we were using too, especially in the military. At one point, they said they were going to smoke us. They could throw us out of a helicopter. It's very easy to get lost in the jungle out here. They kept saying stuff like that. They told us to put our weapons, so we all got online as well, and we had our hands up. We had our weapons slung, and they're having two guys watch while there's a guy basically taking our magazines out of our vest, and they're throwing them on the deck and they're kicking them away, so we don't have time to react. They also, at the same time, the first thing they did was obviously take our weapon and clear it, but they took the magazine out. And they actually held it in a way to where they could pull a charging handle and collect the round and have it not hit the deck. So the way that these guys operated was very smooth. It's very calculated, very precise. You could tell they've done this a lot, or they've rehearsed it a lot. Each Marine had two guys on them. So it was more like they were kind of moving the same way through all of us, all six of us, taking our stuff. Taking pictures of our military IDs, So they had like these devices that kind of looked like a very thin... It looked like a smartphone modern day right now, because in 2009 it wasn't the case. I think the most high-tech thing they had at that time were maybe Blackberries, but they're bulky at that point with the ball, and then they had their flip phone razors and things like that. But these look like something you'd see today. And they were taking pictures of military IDs, and they had some other device that was like reminded me of a BAT system. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Describe it.
It's like a biometrics tracking system. So what it does is when you come across with an insurgent, you can take pictures of their face, their retinas, fingerprints, something like that. But they were trying to scan our IDs with this thing, and it wasn't working. So they're kind of getting frustrated with it. And they had this thing that they were using to load up stuff. It's very advanced physics, something hovering off the ground, not making any sound, but an audible hum. So as they're searching us, we're watching this thing happen. And that's when we started seeing trucks come from our left and go onto this platform. And they were up-armored 350s. I know exactly what 350s are. They were kind of beefier trucks. They were matte black. When they were coming at us, and they go left. And I was glancing between what was going on in front of us with these guys, and then all of a sudden glancing over to what was going on behind them. And that's when I started seeing the key details of this thing. Like it had like a scale pattern on it, kind of like an octagonal, because the craft itself was like an octagonal shape where you could see points. Had a pyramid structure on top that was black, and you can see the shadowing of it as it rotated. But it was rotating very slow. And then it had like these vents on every single corner on the middle part of these the panels anyway. There was like a Vanta black. It was like a dark black that would like absorb light. They had weapon cases in the back of each truck bed. And, you could store like a couple hundred weapons, maybe 100 weapons, maybe a platoon, a company-size element. And it was the same Pelican casings that we would use to store stuff when they were transloading, So very big cases on two of them in each truck bed. And then they had a shipping container thing. I mean, it looked like a shipping container, but smaller and half the size. And the thing that was different about this is it had a cylinder on the front of it that was towards the truck. It was like parallel to the ground, just a cylinder right on the top of this thing. And for years I thought, okay, there's got to be oxygen supply or like a vacuum sealing thing that you would, because obviously I'm thinking it's drugs. I was like, okay, so this is a very advanced way to do that, just years of thinking of this. And come to find out, when I gave my speech in D.C. on that Saturday for the Disclosure Project with Dr. Greer, he's got a lot of people coming out of the woodwork, by the way. And this gentleman, I'm not going to give any detail. I know a little bit about him. But he works in some of these projects at some very controversial facilities. He's aware of what was going on. After I gave my presentation of this, he confirmed, he says, no, he's like, I don't want to leave Michael hanging out there, but I was not expecting to come and talk to you about this. And he went explaining what the operations do, why they do it, and what they were using them for. And he says, it's not drugs that they're putting in these shipping containers. He says it's humans.
February 10th, 1967, 11:22, Erie County Sheriff's Department, Sandusky, Ohio, with Constable Gary Butler, who earlier this morning sighted a UFO over the NASA installation outside of town. Yes, this is Rick Hilberg of Cleveland and Earl Neff of Cleveland interviewing from NICAP. Constable Butler, could you just briefly run through the sighting and tell us what you saw on the approximate times and any comments you might have or elaborations?
Well, this officer while on patrol in the earlier part of Friday morning was going down one of our side roads, Shank Road, which runs parallel with NESA, the local NASA establishment. I was going on from an east to west direction, and making my turn onto the main road when I observed a bluish, bright colored disc object in the southwestern direction of the county. I observed this object for approximately 5 minutes before relaying the message to the Sheriff's Department to make sure that what I did see was a true thing. When I relayed the message to the Sheriff's Department, the State Patrol responded also. The deputy was on Route 250 approaching the bypass when he called to this officer. I observed the object at a stationary position approximately 1.5 miles, maybe 2 miles away. After observing it for approximately 6, 7, maybe 8 minutes, this object began to decline towards the ground and it disappeared behind a group of trees. At this time, I radioed to the other officers who immediately responded to the area, and I myself went to the area to which I saw the object disappear to, and after almost 1.5 hours of observation, we could not locate anything.
It can't be no balloon. It's no balloon, man. It's no balloon. That's a real thing, dude. It is the real thing.
The NASA Independent Study Team did not find any evidence that UAP have an extraterrestrial origin. But we don't know what these UAP are.